Hello and welcome back, dear viewers. Today I'll be talking about dictatorships. This video will be covering the basic facts about a dictatorship. So let's jump right into it. So let's begin with the index. Where are we going to take a look at? What is a dictatorship? How are dictatorships formed? What are the rights that are restricted by this type of government? What are the signs? Why are dictatorships unbeneficial for the ruled or citizens? What are some examples of dictatorships and who led them? Okay, so what is a dictatorship? A dictatorship is a type of government that holds all or most of the power. Power is either circulated within the topmost officials of the dictatorship or held solely by the dictator. How are dictatorships formed? A dictatorship is formed by exploiting ongoing violence, that is, economic, social, or political crises. In such cases, the current government, that is, the government before the dictatorship was formed, allots temporary power to certain individuals, that is, the to be dictators, to aid the government in managing the crisis. The individual then exploits his or her power and topples the government to create a new dictatorship. What are the rights that are restricted by the dictatorship? So, the fundamental rights of the citizens are restricted by dictatorships. To retain the power, they silence certain groups of people by suppressing them by extermination or limiting their rights. The government encourages people who have been loyal followers of them or their party. Rights and information are limited. Information that is approved by the government, which is usually propaganda, with fake stories about how glorious their glorious leader is. Information is diluted and goes through a seriously rigorous process of checking and making sure that every word is just as the government prefers. No more, no less. Now, what are the signs of a dictatorship? The notable signs of a dictator or a dictatorship are the dictator is not called by their post, that is, a dictator, but called by other, more positive titles. Examples include Kim Jong un, who you may have heard from North Korea. He's called a glorious leader. Lenin or Stalin from the Soviet Union. They were called as and referred to as glorious leader, ruler, and I have no time to list about how many more positive titles they were called. They are also portrayed as saviors of the people, and they are sometimes called that, but are in actuality rather unbeneficial. Violence is recorded on an increased or a seriously record high scale. Power is also usually held by one person for life or passed on to the next generation. Also, the dictator's death is largely exaggerated, and sometimes people are forced to cry for the dictator's death. Um, Finally, the exploitation of the ruled. Examples include the Gulag in the Soviet Union, um, which included forced labor, and concentration camps in Nazi Germany. There are more examples of this, but these are just two of them. Now, why are dictatorships unbeneficial for the ruled or the citizens? As previously mentioned, dictatorships censor information and restrict fundamental rights. They also exterminate groups of people, that are certain groups of people, to make their population pure. Most information is false as well. They promote following their cause and becoming their followers, which strips one of their individuality and leads them to become extremists. In most cases, the government incarcerates the unloyal. Executions are carried out to shape the state as per the government ideal or vision. The dictatorship promotes chaos amongst their populace and makes them instigate violence amongst other nations which demote their own ideals. So the dictatorship usually instigates violence amongst other nations which demote. their promoted ideals, that is, the ideals that a dictatorship promotes. Now, lastly, what are some examples of dictatorships and who led them? So, some of the most noteworthy dictatorships came about in the last century. So, most of the dictatorships were formed in the 1900s. So, in the 20th century, that is. Some of them are Germany, which was formed in World War II by Adolf Hitler, Italy, World War II, Benito Mussolini, the Soviet Union, which has partaken in many, many wars. Three of them are World War One, World War II, and the Cold War. Some of the most famous ones, led by Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, and many other leaders that you probably have the time to research. France, led by in the French Revolution, led by Napoleon Bonaparte. Then Belarus, after the Belarusian independence, led by Alexander Lukashenko. China, Mao Zedong. This was led by after the war between what is present day Taiwan and China. North Korea after World War II and the Korean War. The current border was defined after the Korean War. It's currently led by Kim Jong Un. Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. North Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh. This was after the Vietnam War and all that stuff. Uh, Cuba, led by Fidel Castro, who you might know from the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis and all those stuff. Anyways, let me cite my sources. This YouTube video, which is very helpful if you want to gain a basic understanding of dictatorships, and finally, my hypothalamus to recollect most information. Anyways, thank you. This wraps it up for this video. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching and listening to my presentation. Goodbye. I will see you in the next video.